It's June, which means it's time for me to talk about gay stuff. Welcome back to my channel, my beautiful people. Hello, it's your girl, That Zotaku. Happy Pride Month to all the queer, trans, intersex, non-defining, whatever the hell you want to call yourself. Happy Pride Month to all of us. It's that special time of year when all the companies start to dump rainbows all over our timelines to try to get in our pants, to find our wallets, to get our money, because that's the only time they really care about our existence, right? Not really for anything in terms of like us being killed in the streets, us being invalidated in all sorts of media. But no, we have rainbow crepes, which means we care about the gays. Sorry if I seem like I'm having a lot of extra energy. I just had some coffee and, well, I got jittery off of coffee. I'm very sensitive to caffeine. Over here on this channel, we talk about anime, we talk about cartoons, we talk about anything having to do with animated characters, because we believe with every fiber of our being that animated characters are way better than actual human beings, because duh. That's pretty much the basic answer. So it's Pride Month. If you don't know my identity, I identify as a cisgender woman and I am a bisexual woman. I want to talk about queer anime characters. Now, a lot of people love talking about queer anime characters, rightfully so, because a lot of people don't understand the fact that one, queer identities in terms of like sexual identification and for gender identification and everything else in between are valid, they do exist, and they deserve to be represented in the media just as much as anybody else. On the other hand, living in America, a lot of times only in recent years did the idea of sexual fluidity, gender fluidity start being represented in animated content. Meanwhile, in Japanese studios with anime, they've been talking about gender queer identities and different fluidities for a long time, for decades, honestly. I mean, if you remember as a kid, classic examples would be Sailor Uranus and Sailor Neptune from Sailor Moon being a lesbian couple. But for some reason, when it gets bring over to America, they make them cousins. I don't know how that's any better, but okay. If you have been on this channel for a while or follow me on Instagram, last year I did a collaboration with one of my good friends, GBZed. We did a whole ass talk for like 2 days on queer academia. There's a little playlist somewhere up in the channel. I'll link it in one of the cards above. But we talked about queer representation in anime and cartoons and how we felt about it. But now, since it's June, let's bring it back up again because it's Pride Month, and let's just talk about some queer anime characters. I have a list of some lesser known queer characters that I want to get into and discuss, mainly because I feel like when people bring up this list, there's two main things that I've seen. One, they bring about the same characters over and over again, like characters from Card Captor Sakura. They talk about the characters from Sailor Moon, which are all amazing characters. They could talk about Revolutionary Girl Utena. They've all been trailblazers in their own right. But there are also some lesser known media that do have the occasional queer character that isn't the center of the story sometimes, but they still have a decent representation. That's one thing. And two, I also feel as though because we are so starved in this community for decent representation, a lot of times we force certain characters that have never been canonized to be queer. We make them queer because we think that they're supposed to be based off of a bunch of stereotypes that we have listed in our head. Tsunakawa from My Love Story, everyone has characterized him as ace because he doesn't seem interested in being in a relationship, he doesn't seem interested in sex, he doesn't seem interested in anything like that, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he's canonized as ace. He could just not be interested in having a relationship at the age of what, 15? That doesn't necessarily mean that he's ace, he's just probably not interested at that moment. So for the characters that I'm going to be listing today, these are all characters that have been canonized to be that, whether it's by the artist, whether it's by the story being surrounded about their sexuality, or their plotline, their character plotline being surrounded by their sexuality. These are all canonized and not inferred. Because I don't like it when, again, I don't like it when we start inferring that certain characters are supposed to be queer, because then you have a bunch of these companies turning up being like, oh, y'all want this character to be queer? That wasn't never the artist's intention, but sure, why not? I guess they can be queer. And then you have situations where you have like Betty from Rugrats in the new reboot. Now she's a divorced woman who's in a relationship with a woman and everyone's celebrating that. I'm just like, no, maybe she was never meant to be a lesbian. She was married to Howie. She was just very masculine presenting and Howie's a little bit more feminine, and they were still a happy married couple. She didn't need to divorce him and become lesbian. I mean, maybe that was the artist's intention from the beginning, but I don't know. It's just a weird thing that I've been piecing together in my head, where I feel like a lot of characters, people force them, like the audiences force them to be identified a certain way based off of their own biases, and it's like the original creator never intended to be that way, and now you have these companies changing them in reboots just so we can make more money. It just seems very much disingenuous, but again, talk about that another day. So let's get into this list. First anime on this list, we have Hana from Tokyo Godfathers. She is a trans homeless woman, and in this movie, which is about a bunch of homeless people, 3 homeless people that find an abandoned baby on Christmas Eve, and they're trying to find this baby's mother and figure out who abandoned this baby. You have Hana, who is a trans woman, and I love this character mainly because it details the struggles of not only being homeless, but having the added struggle of being a trans woman in society. We all should be pretty familiar with the fact that trans women and trans people in general, or anyone that doesn't identify as cisgender, are oftentimes put in a lot more vulnerable situations that can lead to homelessness. And with that, you have, in this movie, it especially lays out the fact that there's food insecurity, there's safety issues a lot with Hana, where, for example, she is being put in male sections of the homeless centers, of homeless shelters. A trans woman being put in male section of anything is a hard part, but then on top of that, you have like, it gets messy, and Hana has to go through it, and you have to see her struggles in terms of like her backstory, where she was a club singer and she was put in vulnerable situations where you had some customers not respecting her boundaries, not respecting her body, not respecting her identity in general, but she takes it with a lot of stride. In this character, she's not only just a trans woman, and that's not the main focus of her character, she's also a human being, and I feel like this movie humanized her very well in terms of, in the movie, when they found this abandoned baby, she wanted to be a mother more than anything else, but of course she physically cannot have children. She sees this baby and takes it on as her own, and has so much love for this child, and you see her as a human. A lot of times in media, and this is both in anime and any type of media, including cartoons, where you have trans character being made almost like a clown, almost like a circus act, where the whole identity of their character is, oh, they're trans, da 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 da, ha ha ha, when it's really not that. They're not just trans. Trans is just a part of who they are, but it's not their entire being. I feel as though, and again, take my word with a grain of salt because I am not a trans woman, so I can't speak for the trans community, but I've heard online, I've heard through a lot of my friends that they identify with Hana mainly because they are very raw with their experiences and raw with their vulnerability, and it's like, no, I know people like that. This is a thing. What Hana's talking about and how she's feeling in terms of how she moves through the world is a very real feeling for a lot of trans women. So I believe that this is a one good person or a good character that has been done very well, that a lot of people can relate to, and you should be able to check this movie out for so many reasons otherwise, because Makoto Shinkai, genius, man. For the next one that we have Sinaibato from Scum's Wish. Now, I've talked about Scum's Wish before on this channel in another video. I'll attach it in a card somewhere, or you can look back at my other videos. But Scum's Wish, if you saw my other video or if you've seen it before, Scum's Wish has to do with a lot of the realistic struggles and a little bit more raw struggles of being a teenager and being in love when you can't be in love with the person that you truly want. The 2 main characters are both high schoolers, and they're both in love with someone that's way older than them and they can never be with, but the 2 main characters end up together because that's what makes them satisfied. Sanae is a side character where she's also in this situation where she wants to be with someone so badly, but she can't, and what separates them is not age, it's the fact that the person that she's in love with is a straight girl, and Sanae is a lesbian. She's into women. So you see Sanae's character, and at first you may think that Sanae is very toxic in terms of constantly going after the main character, constantly putting, I think her name was Hana, constantly going after Hana. You have Hana just like allowing Sanae to do whatever to just be satisfied just for the sake of their friendship. And at first I also did not like Sanae. I thought Sanae was very toxic, and she is. That's what I like about this character. A lot of people are toxic. A lot of relationships and a lot of ways that people deal with their feelings can be toxic to their friends. But for Sanae, you eventually see that she goes through the pain of realizing that she cannot force her friend to like her back, let alone change her whole sexuality to match hers. She has to deal with the rejection and deal with the idea that she's just going to have to move forward and move on, and that's okay. You can't change someone's sexuality. And that's a very harsh reality to deal with, but that's also part of the growth and growing into your sexuality and growing into your full-fledged person, where you have to accept other people's identities, other people's boundaries, and other people's wants, even if they do match you sexuality-wise. So that's what I think Sanai's character offers into the conversation. Maybe I'm wrong and Sanai's just toxic. You can leave your ideas in the comments below. Next on this list, we have Izaya Orihara from Durarara. Now, I'm a huge Durarara fan. I've watched all the series, I love this show so freaking much. Izaya Orihara is a messed up character, and I love him for that. Like, I find him so attractive because he's so demented and toxic. Again, I have issues. You already know this if you saw my last video or saw my past videos. I have a lot of issues. But for Izaya Orihara, what I like about this character is he's actually asexual. And this isn't one of those situations where because he's not interested in people and he's kind of like a sociopath, that makes him asexual. No, it's actually been confirmed in the novels that Izaya just isn't interested in anybody. He has had relationships in the past, like some type of relations, and that's also still makes him asexual. What I find about this character is really cool is the fact that it brings into the idea, the topic that asexual people can be in romantic relationships. First off, they do exist. It's not that they're broken. It's not that there's something wrong with them. It's not that they just haven't found the right person. Asexual people do exist, and asexual people can be in relationships like Izaya was. They just aren't interested in sex, which is just normal. Again, this is where I talked about a little bit before, where a lot of characters place the term asexual onto certain characters because they don't seem interested in a relationship. But Izaya is actually been confirmed as asexual. I'm not sure if he's a good character to relate to because, again, Homeboy is kind of a sociopath, but in terms of valid and canonized ace people, he is one of them. So I highly recommend watching Durarara, even if you're not into Izaya Orihara. The story arcs is amazing. It's kind of one of those stories where you have like a lot of different subplots being combined together and making one giant story at the end. The writer really does a good job at tying all those stories together. And then when the next seasons came out over and over again afterwards, watch Durarara. I promise you'll like it. You might hate Izaya because he's kind of a jackass, but it's a good show anyway. Number 4 on our list, we have a 2-for-1 actually in the same show. You probably know this if you've been keeping up to seasonal anime, and I'm pretty sure this one came out in 2017. We have Ash and Eiji from Bananafish. Now, Bananafish gets me emotional because of that ending. As for Ash and Eiji, you have two boys. Ash mainly being a former gangster, a former male prostitute for this gangster family who's been trying to break away from that family for a long time. And you have Eiji, who is a reporter from Japan who has come to interview Ash, and some way, somehow they get their lives entangled with each other, where you have two people that you would never think be friends become eventually lovers. And this is canonized. This isn't just some, like, you know, softcore stuff. No, they actually do have love for each other, and it's displayed in the anime, and I love it, even though it's high-key tragic. What I admire about this show is mainly the fact that, one, you have two males that are engaging in a relationship that's based off of love and not sex. Now, when I say that anime has been talking about queer characters for a long time, most popularly it is usually through yaoi, which is gay anime, or yuri, which is lesbian anime. And in those cases, the sexuality is used as a prop for the straight gaze and turns into a mockery of sexuality, and it's become like, oh, it's all about how are they gonna have sex, what do they do to have sex, like what is their sexuality, like sex, and you kind of lose the whole actual growing as a partnership healthy wise type of aspect. That's what you miss in a lot of these yaoi and yuri anime. I mean, they still offer entertainment, they still offer representation, and they still offer something to somebody, so I'm not, you know, discounting them altogether. But for this one, it's not a yaoi and it's not a yuri, it's just an anime that happens to have two male characters that are very fond with each other and have an actual close relationship to each other that's more than just a friendship, and that's based off of mutual respect and love for each other. Ash has unfortunately dealt with a lot of trauma in terms of being a child prostitute. So if you're someone that's sensitive to like child molestation, maybe you want to stay clear from this, especially in the first couple episodes of the anime. But eventually Ash is overcoming that. He's dealing with that trauma, and he's dealing with trying to figure out how to move forward and form healthy relationships with people, mainly Eiji. Eiji does help Ash with that in terms of showing him how it is to be in a healthy friendship with someone. The whole story is a gangster story that has romance between them, and you see two people that have a pure romance with each other, surrounded by a world of violence. So if you like romance and you like violence and you like an uncensored, unadulterated, pure romance between two men, I recommend Bananafish. But if you're sensitive to the idea of like hearing about child molestation, maybe stay clear of this one, just so you will know. The next one on our list, we have Yuta Asaka from Stars Align. Now, if you don't recognize the name Stars Align, it's okay. I did not recognize it either until it came up on my Hulu recommended page. Stars Align is, long story short, a sports anime where you have a bunch of middle school kids who have a lot of interesting issues going on at home that no adult ever addresses, and I'll talk about that in a separate video. Like, the adults in this show suck. But these kids all play soft tennis. That's pretty much what it is. Now, the main characters are all, they're all pretty fine. You just see them, play tennis, become the underdogs, and rise up through the ranks, But there's a side character that not many people have heard of when it comes to talking about queer representation in anime that I think they did an actual excellent job with. The character Yuta is one of I believe he's like the team manager for the team that's in question. And he has a lot of issues in terms of figuring out his gender identity. You see a whole episode devoted to how he's been feeling inside, where he's not sure if he's a he, not sure if he's a she, and ultimately, by the end of the episode, they recognize that they are a they. They're not really sure what feels right to them, but they are figuring it out along the way. And I like this one because you do have a lot of young people, especially in today's age, where people are a lot more comfortable with figuring out their gender identity and a lot more interested in exploring certain aspects of themselves where they don't know what to identify as. And it doesn't even have to be a young person. It can be a fully fledged adult 30, 40, 50 years in the future where they don't know what they want to identify as, because we as a people have been essentially fed these ideas of what a man is supposed to be, what a woman's supposed to be, what anybody's supposed to be, what you're supposed to like, what you're supposed to do. And it's like trying to unlearn that and figure out what you feel like you want to be, what you feel like you want to identify is a hard thing to do for anyone in middle school or an adult, trying to undo all of that, because you have to deal with how your parents are going to feel, how your friends are going to feel, how the world is going to feel, how do you feel? Everything's confusing. Adults can't even get their lives figured out, let alone their own identity. So seeing this kid grow in themselves to become what they wanted to be is really beautiful. You see them play with makeup, you see them play with the idea of getting longer hair, you see them try to figure out the definitions of what does that mean? Non-binary, what does that term mean? Transgender, what does that term mean? Can someone please identify and help me figure out what it is I'm feeling so I don't feel alone anymore? I don't want to feel like an outcast. I don't want to feel like a freak who doesn't know who they are. And that's a really normal feeling that I'm pretty sure a lot of people can relate to. They don't know what they are. They don't know how they feel. They just know that everyone's telling them what they should be, but they don't feel quite right with those terms or quite right with that idea that they're being subjugated to. For me, growing up, I always knew that I was attracted to women, but I didn't understand what that was. I went to a Catholic school my entire life. My family is very conservative. I didn't really understand how to express certain parts of myself. I didn't know how to express and label it until later on when I got through high school and college. Going back to Yuta, you see him go through this whole fledgling journey where you see them go through this little fledgling journey where they are figuring themselves out, and that is a really pure and cute thing to do. But if you watch Stars Align and you find that episode, please do comment down below what you think about that character. Please have a good Pride Month. Please be happy, be joyous, be whatever you want to be happy. That's pretty much all I want. Hopefully there are some other characters, lesser known characters, or well-known queer characters that you can mention in the comments below. I'd love to talk about whether you think they're good representation, horrible representation, someone that you relate to, someone that inspires you. Comment down below everything. I want to hear your guys' thoughts. So that's all I have for this video. Have a good rest of your day, and bye!